They say life is full of surprises. Some are good, like finding money in an old jacket pocket. Others, well, let's just say they hit differently. Like standing in your own kitchen, sipping coffee, and watching your wife stroll in at 7 a.m. with two Fresso busy too. And both of them at the same time. She was two-timing her own affair. Now, most me didn't get angry. I got focused. Because she saw me looking. I watched the hesitation flicker across her face, just for a split second, barely noticeable. That slight pause, that tiny delay in her breath, like her brain was scrambling for an explanation. Good. Let her panic. She glowing from whatever private workout she had just finished. I took another sip of coffee, calm as ever. You look refreshed, I said, letting the words linger just a second too long. She blinked, her fingers twitching slightly before she forced out a laugh. Yeah, I had a great workout. A great workout. Right. That would explain the neck bruises. Unless her gym had a secret class on intense biting techniques, I wasn't buying it. But I didn't confront her. No accusations, no sudden demands. That's what she was expecting. And I never give people what they expect. Instead, I leaned in, kissed her forehead, and smiled. That's great, babe. Proud of you. Then I walked away, leaving her standing there, watching me, wondering, doubting, overthinking. Perfect. Because she thought she was playing me. She thought I was clueless. She thought she was still in control. But the moment I saw those two hickeys, the entire game shifted. What she didn't realize was that I had just stopped being her husband. And from that moment on, I was something else entirely. Because if she wanted to play games, I was about to show her what it felt like to lose. There was a time when I thought I had it all figured out. My life was steady, predictable, comfortable. A house that felt like a home. A wife who greeted me with a smile. Lazy Sunday mornings where we made breakfast together. She'd always try to flip the pancakes too early, and I'd step in, acting like a pro, making a show of getting it just right. She'd roll her eyes and call me a perfectionist, and I'd laugh because, honestly, I kind of was. But that was part of the balance. I was the structured one, the planner, the guy who thought 3 steps ahead. She was the spontaneous one, the one who made things fun. And for the longest time, I thought that dynamic worked. I thought it made sense. I thought we made sense. Looking back, I can see the cracks now, tiny, almost invisible at the time, like hairline fractures in glass. Not enough to shatter anything on their own, but enough to make me wonder how long they'd been there. Maybe it was the way she started being just a little too attached to her phone. At first, it was subtle, holding it closer, turning the screen away when I walked by. Nothing obvious, nothing worth questioning. Or maybe it was how she suddenly started caring about the gym, after years of saying she hated the idea of sweating in public. She'd come home in workout gear, hair damp, talking about cardio like she was training for a marathon. I remember joking once, "You sure you didn't just sit in the sauna for an hour?" She laughed too hard at that. Too forced. But I brushed it off. Because that's what you do when you trust someone. You assume the best. That's the thing about trust. It's not built overnight, but it sure as hell can collapse in an instant. For years, I thought we were solid. We had our routine, our inside jokes, our lazy evenings on the couch watching some dumb reality show she swore she didn't like but always got way too into. I worked hard, made sure we had everything we needed. If she wanted something, I made it happen. Weekend getaways? Booked. That new restaurant she'd been eyeing? Reservations made. She never had to ask twice. Not because she demanded it, but because I wanted to do it. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You invest in them. But love is funny like that. It makes you blind to things you don't want to see. Like how she started getting busy in the evenings. At first, it was work-related. Deadlines, she said. Then it was a new hobby. Yoga with the girls, she said. But the nights stretched longer, the texts got shorter, and the affection started to feel more absent. She still played the role, still said the right things. But there was something missing behind it. The warmth. The realness. I should have seen it then. I should have pieced it together before it slapped me in the face. But the thing about betrayal? It doesn't knock. It doesn't send a warning. It just walks right in and makes itself at home. And one morning, standing in that kitchen, staring at the 2 marks on her neck, it all made sense. It started with something small. Something so insignificant that, in any other situation, I wouldn't have even thought twice about it. We were sitting on the couch, half watching some show neither of us really cared about, when her phone vibrated. Not the usual, casual buzz from a group chat or an email. No, this was different. Short, sharp, deliberate. The kind of vibration you set when you want to know exactly who's texting without even looking. And that's exactly what she did. She didn't look. Instead, she reached for the phone almost instinctively, flipping it face down on the cushion beside her. Just a second too fast. Just a little too smooth. It wasn't a normal reaction. Not for her. She had never cared about notifications before. If anything, she used to roll her eyes at how attached people were to their phones. If it's important, they'll call, she used to say. And yet, here she was, treating a simple text like it was a live grenade that needed to be neutralized before I could see it. I didn't say anything. I just watched. Noticed the way her fingers drummed lightly against her thigh, how she suddenly seemed more focused on the TV despite the fact that I knew she wasn't paying attention. The text had rattled her. She was pretending it hadn't. That was the first crack. The second came a few days later. She had started going to the gym recently, something that, on its own, wasn't strange. But that day, she came home later than usual, walking in with that same slightly too casual energy. Traffic was awful, she said, dropping her bag by the door. But I had checked the traffic. I had checked. The route from her gym to our house was completely clear. A straight, easy drive. No delays. No reason for her to be late. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I tested something. I was actually thinking of signing up at your gym, I said, stretching, acting like it was just a random thought. Figured it's time to get back in shape. Her reaction was immediate. Too immediate. Oh, she said, the words sticking for half a second before she forced a smile. That's great, babe. But I don't know if you'd like it there. It's kinda not your vibe. Not my vibe? A gym? I played along. You think I'd embarrass you with my terrible form? I joked. She laughed too hard. No, of course not. I dunno. I go there to unwind, you know? It's like my me time. Me time. That phrase stuck in my head. Because it wasn't just about the gym. Suddenly, there were a lot of things that were becoming her time. Late-night errands. Sudden coffee runs that never used to exist. Plans with the girls that, when I casually asked about them later, always seemed oddly vague. The details never quite lined up. It wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was enough to notice. The final straw, the moment that cemented that something was off, happened when I found the receipt. It was crumpled in the pocket of her hoodie, the one she always tossed over the couch when she got home. I wasn't even looking for anything. I was just picking it up when the paper fell out. A small, insignificant little thing. But the timestamp? 10:42 p.m. A bar. Not anywhere near the gym. Not anywhere near the girls. And definitely not a place she had mentioned. I held it for a long moment, feeling that creeping, sinking sensation in my chest. There was no reason for her to be there. And yet, she had been. With someone. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't accuse. Because I wasn't interested in guesses. I wasn't interested in arguments and excuses and whatever lies she would spin if I pushed too soon. No, I wanted the truth. And if she wasn't going to give it to me willingly, I was going to take it myself. I was done pretending. Done brushing off the red flags as coincidences, done giving her the benefit of the doubt. That receipt had confirmed what I already knew deep down. She was lying to me. And if she was lying about where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing, then there was only one logical conclusion. She was cheating. But knowing wasn't enough. Suspicion wasn't proof, and proof was what I needed. Not because I wanted to confront her, not yet. No, that would be too easy for her. I needed leverage. I needed control. If she was playing a game, I was about to show her she wasn't the only one who knew the rules. The first thing I did was test the waters. I started small, harmless questions, casual comments, just to see how she'd react. Hey, what was that bar like? I asked one night, feigning curiosity. You know, the one from the receipt? The way her entire body tensed for a fraction of a second was all the answer I needed. But she recovered fast. Oh, that. Yeah, it was just a quick stop after the gym. The girls wanted a drink. Nothing crazy. She said it too easily. Too smoothly. But her mistake wasn't in her words. It was in her timing. She answered too fast. As if she had already rehearsed it. As if she had been waiting for me to ask. That told me two things. One, she knew the receipt was a problem, which meant she had seen it missing. And two, she was expecting questions. Which meant she already had an excuse ready. That wasn't the reaction of someone who had nothing to hide. That was the reaction of someone covering their tracks. I nodded, acted like I accepted her answer, and changed the subject. Let her think she had won. Because I wasn't trying to catch her in a lie, I was studying how she told them. Next came the phone. She had always been lax about security before, leaving it around, never caring if I used it to check directions or play music. Not anymore. Now, it was always on her. If she left the room, it went with her. If she was in the shower, it was upside down on the counter, notifications hidden. And when I finally found a moment to check, the password had changed. That was confirmation enough. She had never changed it before. Never needed to. But now she did. And not just that, her entire digital footprint had shifted. The red receipts on her messages were turned off. Her social media, once filled with random thoughts and inside jokes, had gone silent. She was cleaning up, covering her tracks. A sudden obsession with privacy isn't a coincidence. It's a confession without words. I needed more. So I started tracking her patterns. Not just where she went, but how she talked about it. People who get sloppy. They forget details. They repeat themselves too perfectly, too scripted. I asked about the gym again a week later, casual, throwing it into a conversation like it wasn't important. You still doing those late sessions? I watched her face closely as she nodded, too quickly. Yeah, it's been great. Feeling so much better. A near-identical answer to the one she gave before. Almost word for word. That wasn't real. That was memorized. I checked her gym bag later. The towel inside was bone dry. The water bottle was still full. The shoes were spotless. She hadn't been working out. Not once. Then, the final nail in the coffin, her location lie. I told her I had to work late one evening. Waited until she thought I was settled in. Then I drove straight to her gym. Parked outside. Watched the entrance. I sat there for 2 hours. She never showed. But her phone? When I texted, she replied instantly. Still here, babe. Just finishing up. Love you. That was it. She had no idea I was sitting outside. No idea I could see the lie unfolding in real time. And in that moment, I wasn't just convinced she was cheating. I was convinced she had done this before. Because only someone experienced in lying, someone who thinks they're untouchable, makes a mistake that bold. I didn't feel anger. Didn't feel hurt. All I felt was clarity. The game was no longer about whether she was unfaithful. The game was about how I was going to make sure she paid for it. It happened faster than I expected. I thought I'd have to dig deeper, push harder, track her every move like some detective in a crime thriller. But no. In the end, she made it easy. It was almost insulting how sloppy she had become, how overconfident. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger, thought I was still blind, still the loyal, trusting husband who would never question her. She thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. Because the truth didn't just fall into my lap, it crashed down on me with the force of a wrecking ball. It was a Thursday night. I was supposed to be out of town for work. She had been thrilled when I told her, a little too thrilled, and I watched her reaction closely. The way she barely masked the excitement, how quickly she told me to have fun, before retreating to the bedroom, probably to send whatever signal she used to let him know the coast was clear. That was my cue. I left the house, drove down the street, turned off my headlights, and waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. And then, right on schedule, her car pulled out of the driveway. I followed. She wasn't going to the gym. She wasn't going out with the girls. She was heading straight across town, to a part of the city she had no reason to be in, unless, of course, she had a reason. I kept my distance, my pulse steady, my mind sharp. No emotions. No hesitation. Just cold, calculated focus. She pulled into the parking lot of a hotel. Not a nice one. Not the kind you book for a romantic getaway. No, this was a place where things happened in the dark. A place for secrets. I already knew what I was going to find, but I still needed proof. So I waited. She parked. Got out. Checked her phone. Then walked inside like she had done it 1,000 times before. And not even 30 seconds later, another car pulled up. A black sedan. The door opened. And he stepped out. The same guy I had seen at the gym. The same guy who had stared a little too long that day, not realizing I had already marked him. He didn't hesitate. Didn't look around. He just walked straight inside, comfortable, like he belonged there. Like he had done this before. And that's when it hit me. The full weight of it. The betrayal wasn't just in the act, it was in the ease of it. The way she didn't even hesitate. The way she had probably done this countless times before, with the same smug confidence, the same sickening certainty that she'd never get caught. She had played me for a fool. I clenched the steering wheel, took a slow breath, forcing my heartbeat to stay steady. This was it. This was the moment where most men would break, where they'd storm inside, fist flying, screaming like madmen. That's what she'd expect. That's the reaction she had already planned for. But I wasn't most men. I had no intention of interrupting them. No, that would be too easy. Instead, I pulled out my phone, took a photo of his car. Then I got out, walked straight into the lobby, and past the front desk like I belonged there, just like they had. I didn't need to guess where they were. I already knew how these places worked. I walked down the hall, checking for noise, listening for movement. And then, I heard it. Her laugh. Not the laugh she used with me. This one was different. Carefree. Excited. The laugh of someone who wasn't just having an affair but was thrilled by it. I pulled out my phone, set it to record, and took my proof. The door wasn't locked properly. I didn't need to barge in. Just a gentle push, just enough for the camera to catch them in their most honest moment. Then, just as quietly, I left. No confrontation. No theatrics. Because she had already lost, and she didn't even know it yet. I got back in my car, watched the screen, let the evidence sink in. And then, something strange happened. I didn't feel pain. Didn't feel heartbreak. Didn't even feel betrayal. I felt calm. Because now, I wasn't just a man who had been cheated on. I sat in my car, staring at the video on my phone, watching it play on a loop. My wife. My faithful, loving wife, tangled in sheets with a man who had no idea just how deep he was about to sink. I analyzed every detail, the way she touched him, the way she laughed, the way she looked at him with the same eyes that once swore she'd never love anyone but me. And yet, there she was, so confident, so certain that her secret world was untouchable. That's when it hit me, she wasn't just cheating. She had mastered it. This wasn't a mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment. No, this was a lifestyle. A carefully maintained illusion where she got to play the devoted wife at home while indulging herself in whatever thrill-seeking adventure she needed behind my back. And she thought she was untouchable. That was her biggest mistake. I had two choices. The first was the weak man's way out: anger, confrontation, screaming, demanding answers that I already knew. She'd deny, she'd twist the narrative, she'd cry, and eventually she'd manipulate her way into making me the villain for not trusting her. No, that wasn't an option. Because I wasn't interested in a conversation. I was interested in an ending. But not just any ending, an ending she'd never see coming. I started thinking like her. Where was she weakest? What did she value most? It wasn't our marriage, clearly. That was just a convenience to her. It wasn't love, because love doesn't make you sneak into cheap hotels at night. No, my wife's real weakness was her image. She thrived on admiration, on being seen as the perfect, elegant, desirable woman, the wife everyone envied. She built her entire world on that illusion. So I was going to shatter it, but not with rage, not with messy, chaotic revenge. No, I was going to make her watch her perfect life collapse from the inside out. And the best part? She wouldn't even know it was happening until it was too late. I spent the next week gathering everything I needed: bank statements, shared accounts, legal documents. I reached out to an old friend, a financial advisor, and had every shared asset quietly moved to my name. Our house? Bought before marriage, hers in name only, mine in legal control. Every detail she had overlooked, every loophole she had assumed didn't matter, I exploited them all. By the time I was done, the only thing she truly owned was her personal savings. And even that was about to take a hit. Then came her social world. My wife had always prided herself on her reputation: dinners with executives, charity galas, brunches with women who spent more time curating their online personas than actually living. She wasn't just part of this world, she depended on it. She needed to be admired, needed to be seen as someone desirable, accomplished. So I made sure that, when the time came, she'd be seen for exactly who she was. I started with her lover. Not the gym guy, the other one. The one she thought I hadn't noticed. He was older, wealthier, married. A man with far more to lose than she did. A man who, once his wife found out, would never risk everything for her. I sent the video. No words. No explanation. Just undeniable proof of what he had been doing behind his own wife's back. And then I waited. It didn't take long. Within hours, his entire life imploded. His wife? Filed for divorce. His business? Publicly dragged through the mud. And as for my wife? She suddenly found herself blocked, ignored, discarded by the very man she thought she could rely on. And she still had no idea I was behind it. Then came the second part of the plan, the gym rat. He was younger, cocky, probably thought he was the only one in her life. So I made sure he knew the truth. Sent him a little gift, screenshots of her messages to the other guy. Every promise she had made to him, she had made to someone else. The betrayal on his end wasn't just that she had a husband, it was that she had lied to him, too. Men like him don't handle humiliation well. He didn't leave quietly. No, he made sure everyone at that gym, everyone in her social circle, knew exactly what kind of woman she was. By the time I was done, she was alone. Completely, entirely alone. The man she thought she could run to? Gone. The boy toy she thought she could control? Turned against her. And then, finally, when the walls had already started closing in, when she thought things couldn't possibly get worse, I made my move. She came home one night to find a single envelope waiting for her. Inside? Divorce papers. But not just any papers, papers that left her with nothing. No house. No assets. No financial safety net. Just her name, now tied to a scandal that had already started spreading through her precious social world. Her friends? Vanished. Her reputation? In ruins. Everything she had built, everything she had depended on, was gone. And the best part? I wasn't there to see her reaction. I had already moved on. Already started living a life without her. Because that was the final, ultimate piece of revenge. She didn't just lose her marriage. She lost the life she had taken for granted. And she never even saw it coming. It all came together so perfectly, so seamlessly, that by the time she even sensed something was wrong, it was already over. The pieces had been set, the trap was closed, and she had walked straight into it with that same blind confidence that made her think she could play me forever. But the difference between us was simple. She played for thrills, while I played for consequences. I chose the perfect setting. Not an argument in private, not an emotional confrontation behind closed doors where she could twist the narrative, cry her way out, or turn it back on me. No, she thrived on image, on perception, on the admiration of the people around her. So that's exactly where I planned to destroy her. It was an anniversary party. Not ours, one of her closest friends, the kind of event where everyone she desperately tried to impress would be watching. The women she gossiped with, the men she flirted with for validation, the social circle she had built her entire self-worth on. A gathering of people who still thought she was the perfect wife, the devoted partner, the woman who had it all. Not for long. I had been methodical. Every piece of the plan had been executed in silence. Her assets? Frozen. Her financial security? Gone. The apartment she thought was her fallback plan? Leased under my name, legally reclaimed. The men she had juggled? Both out of her life, both carrying the weight of her betrayal. One despised her. The other had been publicly humiliated by his wife in a scandal that was still unfolding. She was already bleeding before she even knew she'd been cut. But the real moment, the real execution, was about to happen in front of everyone. She was dressed for attention that night, completely unaware that it would be the worst kind of attention. She walked in with that effortless grace, that rehearsed confidence, still oblivious to the fact that every eye in the room would soon turn on her for the wrong reasons. I let her enjoy it. Let her sip champagne. Let her flash that carefully practiced smile. Let her feel untouchable for just a little longer. Then, at exactly the right moment, I made my move. The host of the party, her dear friend, took the microphone for a toast. That was my opening. I stepped forward, smiling, relaxed, the perfect loving husband, and casually asked if I could say a few words. Of course, no one objected. I had always been the devoted one, the man who adored his wife, the husband who, by all accounts, was lucky to have such a beautiful, charming woman by his side. The irony almost made me laugh. I started simple. A speech about trust, about love, about the illusion of a perfect marriage. And then, just when I saw the first flicker of uncertainty cross her face, I pulled out my phone. The video played on the large screen behind me before she could even react. Her. With him. In that cheap hotel room. A moment of silence fell over the crowd as realization settled in. Her betrayal, exposed in the most brutal, undeniable way. I turned to her, calm as ever. You always said marriage was about honesty, I said. So I figured it was time to share the truth. Her face went pale, her mouth opening and closing, searching for words that wouldn't come. She looked around, desperate, but there was nowhere to run. The women she had gossiped with now whispered behind manicured nails, their eyes filled with the kind of delight only scandal could bring. The men who had once flirted with her looked at her differently now, like she was nothing but a cautionary tale. And her closest friends? The ones who valued status more than loyalty? They took a step back, already distancing themselves from the wreckage. She wasn't just embarrassed. She was socially exiled. Then came the final blow. The moment I had engineered from the very beginning. As she stood there, humiliated, barely able to breathe under the crushing weight of judgment, I handed her an envelope. "This is yours," I said. "Or, at least, what's left." Inside? The divorce papers. Proof that everything she had counted on was gone. The house? Not hers. The savings? Drained. The security she assumed she had? Erased. And worst of all, she was alone. No husband. No affair partners. No reputation left to cling to. She tried to speak, to plead, to make it go away. But there was nothing left to say. She had already lost. I walked out before she could even process it, before she could try to rewrite the story in her favor. Because the truth was, I didn't need to see the aftermath. I had already won. The silence that followed my final words was heavier than anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just quiet, it was the kind of stillness that crushes. The kind of silence that exposes. The kind that tells you that everything you've built, everything you've lied for, everything you thought you could control, is gone. And at the center of it all stood her. My wife. The woman who had spun deception so flawlessly, who had played her little game with such confidence, now completely frozen in place. She wasn't looking at me. No, her wide, panicked eyes were darting around the room, scanning for something, anything to hold on to. A sympathetic face. A lifeline. But she found none. Because in that moment, she was alone. Her breathing hitched first, shallow and shaky, like she was trying to catch up to what had just happened. Then came the trembling hands, the way she clutched the divorce papers like they were some kind of misunderstanding that could be reasoned away. "No, wait, this isn't," she started, her voice cracking, but she had nothing to say. Because what defense could there be? The evidence was right there, playing behind her on a screen that was now just a frozen image of her biggest betrayal. Every whisper in the room, every pair of judging eyes, every second of deafening humiliation, it was all hers to bear now. I didn't move. Didn't speak. I just watched. Watched as her confidence shattered, as the realization finally started to seep in. She wasn't in control anymore. The script she had written, the life she had orchestrated where she was the beloved wife, in the irresistible secret affair, it had collapsed in a matter of minutes. And she knew it. The first tear slipped down her cheek, and she caught it too late. She tried to wipe it away quickly, but another followed. Then another. She was unraveling. The woman who once thrived on admiration, who walked into every room like she owned it, now couldn't even lift her head. "Please," she whispered, barely audible, and I had to fight the urge to laugh. "Please? Please what? Please undo it? Please erase the truth? Please let her keep the life she had already set on fire?" Her knees buckled slightly, but she steadied herself, desperate to maintain whatever dignity she had left. "We can talk," she choked out, forcing a pleading smile, as if this was just a mistake, as if this was something a few well-crafted excuses could fix. "You don't understand, Io." I tilted my head slightly, letting her words die in the air between us. "No," I said, calmly. Finally. That single word shut her down completely. She stopped breathing for a second, the finality of it hitting her harder than anything else. She had expected anger, expected shouting, expected me to fight for her. But what she got instead was indifference. She wasn't prepared for that. I took a slow step closer, just enough so that only she could hear me now. "You had your chance to talk," I said, my voice even, emotionless. "Months. Years. And you chose lies." Her lip quivered. She hated this. Hated that she was on the receiving end of silence for once. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. "So now, you're going to listen." She swallowed hard, nodding like a scolded child, like she had no choice but to obey. Because she didn't. "Everything you thought you had? It's gone. The house? Mine. The accounts? Closed. The reputation you cared so much about." I gestured slightly to the sea of eyes watching her fall apart in real time. "Ruined." Her breathing hitched again, and she gripped the papers in her hands tighter, as if holding them hard enough could change the words written on them. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered, voice cracking. And that's when I finally let a small, cold smile cross my lips. You didn't mean to get caught, I corrected. That was the truth, wasn't it? She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she lost. A sob finally escaped her lips, her whole body trembling now, but I just stepped back. Enjoy your night, I said smoothly, before turning away, leaving her exactly as she had left me, alone, discarded, and powerless. The moment I walked out of that room, I felt lighter than I had in years. Because the truth was, this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishment. It was about freedom. She had spent years lying, cheating, controlling the game. But tonight, I ended it. And the best part? She would have to live with it. They say karma has its own way of balancing things out. That eventually, the universe corrects injustices. But I never believed in waiting for karma. I became it. And now, as I watched the aftermath unfold, as I saw the wreckage of what used to be her perfect life, I knew one thing for certain: she was never going to recover from this. It didn't happen all at once. No, the destruction was slow, painful, drawn out in a way that made it all the more devastating. At first, she thought she could salvage what was left. She tried reaching out to her friends, the ones she used to sit with at brunch, laughing at the misfortunes of others. But now, they wouldn't even return her calls. She wasn't one of them anymore. She wasn't the glamorous wife with the perfect marriage. She was a scandal, a walking embarrassment, the woman who got caught in the most humiliating way possible. And people like her friends? They don't forgive that. They don't keep liabilities around. Then came the financial collapse. The account she assumed she had access to? Gone. The house she thought was hers? No longer an option. She had no savings. Why would she? She had built her life around the assumption that I would always be there to provide. And now? She had nothing. She was forced to move in with a distant relative, someone who barely tolerated her presence, someone who only took her in out of obligation. From a queen to a burden. The irony was almost poetic. But the real punishment wasn't the money. It wasn't the house. It wasn't even the friends who turned their backs on her. It was the loneliness. Because for the first time in her life, she was truly, completely alone. The affair partners? Gone. One of them had his entire life fall apart after I sent the evidence to his wife. Divorced, disgraced, financially drained. He had no love left for my wife, only resentment. The other? The younger one? He had turned against her the moment he realized he wasn't the only one. He was supposed to be the secret, the escape, the thrill. But when he found out he was just another piece on the board, he left without looking back. So there she was. No friends. No lovers. No safety net. Just the cold realization that she had lost everything she took for granted. And meanwhile, I thrived. I didn't just move on. I evolved. I rebuilt my life, piece by piece, without her shadow hanging over me. My career took off. Turns out, when you're no longer pouring energy into someone who drains you, you have a lot more to give to yourself. I traveled. I met new people. I lived. And most importantly, I was happy. Because I had done something most people never get the chance to do. I had seen justice in action. I had watched someone who thought they were untouchable fall from grace in real time. She reached out once. Months later. A pathetic, broken message filled with empty apologies and carefully chosen words designed to sound remorseful. I didn't even open it. Because in the end, she wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she lost. And that was the difference between us. She had spent her life manipulating, deceiving, taking without consequences. But now, she was just another cautionary tale. A reminder that no matter how carefully you build your lies, no matter how invincible you think you are, eventually, the truth catches up. And when it does, you lose everything. Just like she did. It's funny how life works. One moment, you think you have everything, a stable home, a loving partner, a future you can count on. And the next, you realize it was all a lie. But the thing about betrayal is that it's not just about losing trust. It's about realizing that someone looked you in the eye, smiled, kissed you goodnight, and all the while, they were planning their next move behind your back. That's what burned them most. Not the cheating itself, not the physical act, but the ease with which she did it. The confidence. The certainty that she could get away with it. That she could lie her way out if she ever got caught. That I would forgive. That I would stay. That she was untouchable. But she wasn't. She thought she could play me. Thought she could cheat and manipulate and gaslight her way through life like she had probably done to others before me. But this time, she lost. I made sure of it. I didn't just walk away. I walked away knowing she had nothing left. And maybe that sounds harsh to some people. Maybe some would say I should have taken the high road, let karma handle it, just moved on. But let me ask you something. Why should betrayers get to walk away without consequences? Why should the people who lie, cheat, and deceive be allowed to move forward like nothing happened, while the ones they hurt are left to pick up the pieces? That's not justice. That's not fairness. I didn't destroy her life. She did. I just made sure she finally had to face the truth. So now, I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, if you had been lied to, humiliated, deceived so easily by someone who was supposed to love you, what would you have done? Would you have walked away quietly? Or would you have made sure she felt every ounce of the betrayal she so carelessly inflicted? I was a man with a plan.